welcome to the onboarding of your Series LLC. I'm Scott Royal Smith. I'm the owner of Royal Legal Solutions. It's my pleasure today to be able to walk you through the basics and reminders about how the Series LLC works, how it works in conjunction with your operating company, as well as being able to walk you through step-by-step with the questionnaire process of doing that. These questionnaires are our number one goal of being able to create these videos, being able to have complete and accurate questionnaires by the time we finish this process here together. I'm joined with Gina Folk, which is our COO, and Gina is going to be serving as our model student here, which is in your position to be able to ask those questions that otherwise we believe that you may ask as we go through this process. So Gina, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Yes.
I'll go ahead, guys, and then just go ahead and start off with a brief refresher of what we have for our Series LLC. So for our Series LLC, this we consider as one of our Empire Builder products. If you remember, this is where our Series LLC is located inside of our asset protection and real estate company structure. So we have our asset holding company here. That's your parent Series LLC that's owned by the agent trust to be able to create anonymity of ownership here at the parent level. And we'll also have the individual child series and land trust is associated with each property. You'll remember that the child series compartmentalizes every asset from lawsuit. So if there's a lawsuit against one asset, they can't go after the other assets. And that the land trust is going to be our structure to be able to help us create anonymity at the ownership at the property level. Additionally, you'll see here that we have our operating company. This is our traditional LLC, typically formed as an anonymous traditional LLC. And this is where is our face to the world and otherwise protects us personally from the lawsuits. The asset holding company protects all of our assets and all of our stuff. Our operating company protects us and our credit score and serves as to be our face to the world and the blocker from anybody that tries to hurt our credit score by suing us personally. You'll also see here that all of these holding companies are owned. All of these holding companies are in turn actually owned by our living trust, and our living trust is the ultimate owner of everything in our lives. Now, when we look at the Series LLC, we typically say you don't need any LLCs. If you don't have anything, you have no business, you have poor credit, and you're not intending on improving your credit, then you didn't need any LLCs. We have this traditional LLC because it allows us to build business credit, lets us protect our good credit, allows us to structure some of our money to potentially save on taxes and puts in any risky activities that we're doing, which includes signing contracts, collecting rents, but also includes sending text messages to people, sending emails, anything like that that would otherwise be put us in harm's way. We're going to do that through our traditional LLC. Additionally, we're going to talk about this here is our Series LLC, which is where we protect all of our separating our assets from our operations. Our traditional LLC is our operations. Our Series LLC is to hold our assets. It's going to protect our soft assets, which is like cash, stocks, etc. It's going to isolate and protect any of our hard assets. That's your pieces of real estate, your sailboat, your cars, whatever the case that might be. And this is great for preventing what we call a judgment spillover, which is a lawsuit against one asset or against us being able to spill over into any of our other assets. So when we look at this asset holding company, here's our basics. We have our parent Series LLC that has the individual children associated with it. And this parent, regardless of all of the children, it's going to have one bank account, one set of accounting bucks, one EIN number, and this is an infinitely scalable system. And then typically our clients are forming this either in Texas because we want to help avoid some fees, or in Wyoming for people that really are keen on Wyoming. But the protections and the anonymity ultimately are exactly the same with how do we structure these. We typically use Texas because there's some cost savings. Now, in this diagram, what you'll see here is that I've compartmentalized each of the child series to own more things besides just real estate. So child series A could own our cash and our stocks, right? Child series B could own our investment properties. Child series C might own a syndication investment. Child series D might own a loan that we made to somebody, right, as an asset. So I just wanted to bring that up in case people are thinking about like, hey, is this more than just investment properties? Yeah, it's going to be more than just investment properties. And that we use that structure to be able to compartmentalize everything that we want to make sure it's protected. Now, when we use the Series LLC in conjunction with real estate, or that we want anonymity in the ownership of these assets, that's when we have to start using these land trusts or property trusts, right? So we're able to maintain this as one cohesive system, but you'll notice between this diagram and the last diagram we looked at that this one has land trusts, and because that's what we want, anonymity of ownership. If we are just looking to compartmentalize, you can do that in the name of the child series. But remember, the name of the child series also has the name of the parent into it, right? So if anything that we own is directly listed into the name of the child series, they're going to be able to connect them all together because those will all have the name of the parent. So we want to have anonymity in place. We have this extra trust layer that allows us to avoid the due on sale clause for real estate, but also create anonymity in the ownership of any of our assets. That's true for any investments, notes, or anything else that you're doing as well. Great. So that's our brief overview of the Series LLC and the operating company. And now Gina is going to help us with guiding us through your experience with opening up your questionnaire. So sent Gina an email that has all of the questionnaires in it. And then Gina's going to show us that email and how do we get into it and how do we navigate to that Series LLC questionnaire.
Yep. So here's the questionnaire. I presume I click on this Series LLC.
Yep, that's the one.
And
Great.
there we are.
And now we're inside of our Series LLC. So this is our just basic information that we wanted to collect from you around your email, your full legal name as it appears on your government ID. We'd like to have your phone number to make sure that we have the best number to reach you at in conjunction with this questionnaire. Also with their Series LLC, one of the most important things that we have to get is an EIN number. Now, an EIN number is the tax identification number for the Series LLC. You have to have that EIN number to be able to open up the bank accounts for the Series LLC. And in this case, you have to provide your social security number because that's how IRS is able to connect you as the responsible party for the entity. But to open up the bank accounts for the Series LLC, you have to have an EIN number. You can't use your social security number. Next here, we're going to ask about what state do you want the LLC to be filed? And so that's typically going to be Texas, Delaware, Nevada, and Wyoming for almost all of our clients. All of our clients are typically using Texas because Texas doesn't have any yearly fees. So you can go ahead and list Texas there. And then what type of business will your LLC do? That would just be like investing, right? Or investments. We have to list something that tells IRS what is the nature of the business. So typically it doesn't matter what we put here. So you can put like a generalized description of what this LLC will do. We'll make those selections whenever we're filing for the EIN number for you as we look as appropriate. So don't worry about nailing that perfect, but just a general description there. Now, we also need to know to be able to file the Series LLC, we need to know which name you want. Now, nobody's going to interact with this name. Nobody's going to see this name. This name is just for your own private purpose. Now, what's important here is that you don't put any name that is going to give away personally identifying information to you, and that it can't start with the same two words, right? So you can't use the same two words together in your name. We ask you to please list 3 names. And remember that most common names are taken. So we need 3 names because the first name might get rejected. The first name is rejected, we're going to try the second name. The second name is rejected, we'll try the second. And then we'll go to the third name. Now the third name gets rejected. Now we have to get back in touch with you to be able to get more names, which is going to slow down the process and ultimately going to delay our ability to be able to give you a timely delivery like we promised at the very beginning of this process. So you please click 3 names here that are not common, that you feel comfortable with, that is in line with that. So if you only can get 1 name, because that's all you can decide on here today, make sure it's a great uncommon name. So make sure that that's going to go through. And if you want to check any of these names ahead of time, the thing to do is to go to the Secretary of State of whatever state that you're going to form that LLC in. So if that's in Texas, you go to the Texas Secretary of State website and do what's called a name availability search. And that would guarantee that your name is available when you get here. So if that's something you want to pause this video and do, that's fine. Go ahead and do that. Otherwise, I've had a lot of success with just picking names that aren't common and given 3 quick names because I know it's not essential for any type of my business. Nobody's made or lost money based upon the name of their asset holding company. I guarantee you.
Awesome. Okay.
Great. So tell us about the additional members. So this is where if you had multiple people that are going to own the ownership interest in your Series LLC. So if this is just you and you're the sole person and the sole owner of the LLC, then this is where you don't need to put anything because there are no additional members. This is just you being the member of your LLC. Now, if there's additional people, like you have business partners or you have a spouse, and you're going to co-own this LLC together, you would list their name and contact information and their ownership percentage here. So if it's you and a business partner and it's 50-50, you would list all their identifying information, their name, phone number, their address, and that they are a 50% owner with it. Most of the time and in most circumstances, when it's spouses here, it's a 50-50 ownership in the spouse. Between you and the spouse, or in some cases, if you have a living trust in place, that would be your living trust would actually be the member of your LLC, because your LLC is in turn by your living trust, and then you and your spouse, or just you, are the beneficiaries of that living trust during your life. So if this is just you, then you can go ahead and leave it blank. If there's more people that we need to list, then we list those more people and their percentage ownership. If it's your living trust that's the owner, then that's going to be the Gina Folk Living Trust. And that's how you can identify for us what that is.
Okay. And so if I don't have my living trust yet, but you're going to do it for me, I just put in my living trust?
Yeah, just put your name and then living trust.
Okay.
Now, when it says the managers about the LLC, what that's referring to is the people that control the LLC. So one of the things you're actually able to do with LLCs is you can split the ownership, which is the membership interest, from the manager. So in this case, the member of the series LLC would be the living trust. We want all of the ownership interests of all of the underlying assets of the LLC to all go to Gina Folks Living Trust. But who is going to control the LLC, open up the bank accounts for it, sign on the LLC's behalf whenever that needs to happen? That's the manager. In this case, that would actually be Gina Folk individually. So Gina, in this case, would just list her name, phone number, and address.
And so like, I think, like, what if my spouse, like, should it be me and my spouse if I had one, or is it just best to keep just one person as the manager?
So anytime that you have multiple managers listed and associated with the LLC, then both of those people typically have to show up to do anything on behalf of the LLC. So they both have to sign any documentation related to any actions of the LLC. Both would have to sign on the creation of any of the bank accounts. So we typically say that it's better if you streamline that process and have a single manager. So that way both people don't have to be present for any action that the LLC is going to do. Remember, that's the person that's just taking the actions. The ownership is still listed in as the members. So if it's you and like a third party partner, probably both of you are listed as the members, as like say 50-50 owners, but maybe only you are the manager because you guys decided to say, listen, we need one person that can do all of the administrative back end of what's going on at this LLC. We both don't want to have to show up to the bank every time we're doing something. So which one of us is going to do that? And my recommendation is that if you're the person that's actually filling out this questionnaire, you're probably the person that's the more apt party to go through and do the administrative pieces. So you should be the one to list yourself here as the manager.
Okay, great. Okay, next.
Next is going to be listing the properties or assets to be transferred into the series LLC structure. So for most people, that's going to be a collection of real estate assets. So that for those, we need to know the address, how they're currently owned. Are they currently owned by another LLC? Are they currently in your name, a name of you and a partner, whatever the case may be? We also need to know the approximate date of purchase of the property. That will tell us where that, what is the identifying information for that piece of real estate. If you have the deeds associated with those properties, we ask you to please produce those and give those to us. Those can be found through the county clerk's website. If you can't get those, not to worry, we have methods and means to be able to go get those on our own. It's just going to mean things are going to take longer because now there's more work that we're having to do and research on our end. So if you can help us providing that documentation for us, then that will help expedite or help move your file along the journey and through the process faster. If you have other notes, other hard money loans, whatever the case may be, other assets that you're going to protect as part of this structure, then go ahead and list those so we can make sure that all of the assets that you originally discussed moving to this structure, we have all the identifying information regarding those assets. If it's not clear to you what to put, then just put your best description of what that asset is. And that way we'll be able to say, great, We know that there's a note here and that it's associated with some type of property. We know to ask about that and get more clarifying information about that. As long as you have it listed here, we'll create a space for it and then be able to follow up with you about that.
Okay. So if I had a boat or something else, I would just put in there, boat.
Yeah. But if it's my schooner, I'm going to put my schooner inside of my series LLC. That would be.
All right, good.
Great. So next is going to be your mailing address. This is where you want to see receive any mail on behalf of the entity. You don't want this to go to your home address because that potentially could blow your anonymity, and you don't want that to go to the law firm because we aren't set up to be able to scan and process that mail for you. So typically all of our clients are setting up as like a virtual mailbox. Those typically cost around $20 to $30 a month. Either those PO boxes or virtual mailboxes give an address that you can put here to have them send an email. They scan that mail and then they email it to you. So if you're watching this on the videos, you're filling it out and you don't have that set up yet, just go online and quickly register for one and then put that information here inside of your mail address.
Great. Okay, so I'm just gonna put in a PO box that I have. Oops. Okay.
Cool. Now we have a home address. The home address won't be part of the public record, but it's what we use for any of the internal identifying documentation that connects us. Which genofolk are we talking about? Well, it's the genofolk that resided at this address at the time that we created that documentation.
Okay.
And then once you fill out that home address piece, the next piece for us to look at here is our return policy and also tells you what our timelines are for the questionnaire. So we know to be able to successfully deliver to you on the timelines that we promised, that we have to have these questionnaires back within 30 days to be able to ensure that delivery. We also have a 14-day return policy from the time that we made the purchase, which ensures that we didn't get too far down the field of getting too heavily invested before the time that you said, hey, listen, I've had some type of change of circumstance and I need to reverse course from putting this together. It's a way to be able to protect both of us from getting too overly invested into the process with that. And so if you can just click on the return policy to say that you acknowledge that this is the return policy for us so that we can all ensure that we're playing by the same rules. And then you'll also want to click send me a copy of my responses. That way you make sure to have your own copy of all of your questionnaires if that's important to you. Otherwise, you can go ahead and click submit and we'll wait for the confirmation on the next page. It looks here that your responses have been recorded. So fantastic. So we've actually fully completed the onboarding questionnaire for the Series LLC. Congratulations. Let's go ahead and jump back in to our questionnaire there for the operating LLC. So if you guys remember when we're talking about the questionnaire for the operating LLC, what we're referring to is going to be this operating company, this traditional LLC with anonymity. Now, your operating company can be created with or without anonymity. The questionnaire we're going to fill out today is going to be the one with the anonymity in place because there's a few extra questions regarding this anonymous trust and the creation of that entity. So if your questionnaire is actually for a traditional LLC without anonymity, then please select that inside of what questionnaire you're going to pull up. But just bear with us as any questions that relate to trustees or anything related to the trust, that'll be obvious. You just won't have that inside of your questionnaire. So Gina, let's go ahead and walk through the email that we have. If you could please share your screen with us.
Can do that. So we'll go back to the email and we are looking for anonymous traditional LLC.
That's it.
Awesome. And there we are.
Yeah, so then we go ahead and it's the same process with filling out some of that same information. So then we'll go ahead and it's the email, legal name, the phone number we want to put, the social security number that's associated with you so we can get the EIN number for the LLC. Again, we're back into needing to list 3 potential names for the LLC. Remember that these names should not be connected to any identifying information about you, nor should they have the same 2 words, starting with the same 2 words. And this will be the LLC that's attached to your public facing entity, right? So this is the entity that people are going to be interacting with. So if you want a fun name like Crazy Town LLC, that's awesome. Go ahead and use that. If you start with one name, you're like, wow, I really don't like Crazy Town LLC. People are thinking that I have like a clown store or something like that I'm doing. Not to worry. You can always file a DBA for $15 approximately, and then you can operate under any name with that LLC. So again, it's great to be able to get this LLC name dialed in for what it is that you want, but also it doesn't matter, right? You can always go ahead and change the name that you're doing business under for any branding purpose that you want to later on. The most important part is that we have 3 names that are pretty unique and novel because most common names are taken. So that way one of them will get accepted by the Secretary of State. And if you ever want to know ahead of time whether it's going to get accepted or not, then you need to go onto the Secretary of State website with whatever state this LLC is going to be filed in, that you chose to be filed in, and then do a name availability search through that LLC. So going on to our next question here, we need to know what business your LLC is going to be doing. The default for us is property management. Right? It's property management or property consultation or consulting services, something other that's a generic term that we're able to then submit the EIN number connection to that. The LLC where the state will file it is going to be typically, we would either use Texas or Wyoming to be able to be those 2 states that are going to give us the anonymity we're looking for, as well as the protection. Sometimes it will have those LLCs formed in the state where the client's located. That'll either come in because that's the client preference, is like, hey, I really want this LLC to be formed in my state, or that they're operating a physical business, like a brick and mortar store in that state, or they're going to be planning on owning assets directly in that state. And those instances, those LLCs need to be formed in that state. So for most of our clients, though, what we're doing is we're using this LLC for tax purposes and collecting rents. And in those cases, we're operating just like an internet marketing company would, right? We're selling products everywhere in the United States as this LLC, and we're selling widgets to go do that. Does that mean we have to register that LLC in every single state where we sell a widget? Absolutely not. Right? We can just, we can operate and form an LLC in one state and use it anywhere as long as we're not doing a brick and mortar store or directly owning assets. So for most of our clients, the cheapest and best state to use that is going to be Texas, because Texas won't have any yearly filing fees associated with it. Great. Now we see here. And so this is the anonymity portion of the LLC creation. So this is going to be the trustees for the agent trust. So if you remember, we had the LLC that was formed. The LLC is owned by an anonymous trust. We call that an agent trust. And anywhere it's listed on who is the ownership of the LLC, that agent trust or anonymous trust is the entity that's listed there. So there's no way for anybody to find out anything about that agent trust because that trust is not filed on any of the public records. Now, for internal purposes, we need to have listed who is in control of that trust. For almost all of our clients, that's going to be you. You're the trustee of the trust, meaning the person that gets to control the trust, and the trust will in turn own that LLC. So for all intents and purposes, as the trustee of the trust, you're also de facto the person that's controlling the LLC. So who's controlling this entity? That's you. So you can list Gino Folk as the client name with the appropriate other information. If you already have that listed out as like a copy paste job, that's a great time to be able to do that. If you happen to have multiple parties that are going to be in control of this entity, again, we recommend that you don't, because that could potentially mean that you have to have multiple people involved in any of the transactions, setting up the bank accounts, or otherwise on signing on any documentation or take any actions. But if you have to or you want to, this would also be the place that you would list a co-trustee, somebody else who has the management authority along with the existing, with you as the client in this case. But our recommendation is always best if you just have a single trustee, because that makes the operational components of what you do later on simple and easier. Next, going into the beneficiaries, these are the people that are legally entitled to the benefits of this trust. Now, I know for the work that we do that the beneficiaries of the trust won't matter, because all of the money that we bring in through the operating company is going to be pushed into our asset holding company. So in almost all circumstances, we list the beneficiary as just being the client. But if you don't have an asset holding company or you have multiple partners that are through this LLC and this trust, then this would be the place that you would list who are the people that are entitled to the benefits of the trust. So before in the question above, it was who can control the trust, right? And this question is who's entitled to the benefits? Who's entitled to any of the assets or money that's created by this LLC and trust?
So that's likely to be me. And if I had a spouse, the spouse.
Yeah, it would probably be you and the spouse in that circumstance.
And then if you're doing a living trust for me, isn't that already going to be outlined in the trust, or does that?
Yeah, so if we're doing a living trust, then the living trust would then be the beneficiary of the agent trust. If this was your sole company and it was all just going to a living trust, it could all point to living trust.
Okay. So in this instance, I guess I'll just put it to my living trust just because you're creating one for me. So
yep, if we have the living trust and we're creating that for you, this would be the place to put it.
And if we're not, then we would just put my name.
Then we just put your name. That's right.
Okay.
So here we have the mailing address. For the mailing address, again, this is what we recommend you set up here with a PO box, a virtual mailing address, something we can set up online. Yeah, because we don't want any mail coming to the law firm address because we're not set up to scan and send that mail. And we don't want that going to your home address because that could potentially blow your anonymity. However, we want to know your home address because that needs to be listed inside of the terminal and internal documentation for the LLC and the trust that helps identify you. So here, Gina has that listed as the Abbott Martin Road. And
well, that's my home address. Yep, I'll just change this to.
Okay. So we're going to change that to the correct home address. And then while Gina's typing that in, again, it's the same thing as the recognition here. It's like, hey, for this scope of product, just please confirm the refund policy that I have. We need 30 days to be able to timely deliver your work. So we need these questionnaires completed within 30 days, and that we have a refund policy that gives us 14 days to be able to pivot and change course and reverse course if there's a change in circumstances that we need to address, but we limit that 14 days to make sure we're not too far down the field to be able to reverse course appropriately. So when you're finished with that, if you want a copy of the responses, click the send me a copy of the responses button. Otherwise, click submit, and we'll go to a confirmation page. And there you go. Now the confirmation page has been recorded. Now, if there's any places in here that you struggled in being able to fully and accurately answer the questions of your questionnaire, the best thing to do is to contact us at support@royallegalsolutions.com, and we'll be able to help you with those questions as appropriate. So thank you very much for your completing your onboarding with us today. I'm looking forward to be able to see you in a future onboarding video.